Hello everyone, my name is Tsuki, and in this video I'll be giving you a brief overview of each of the jobs currently in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. For anyone new to the game, or someone just looking to branch out from the job they're currently playing, the goal of this video is to give you enough information to decide which jobs you might be interested in playing. Now before we begin, this section will be aimed primarily at people who are new to the game and may need a bit of explanation on the different categories that each job falls under. If you'd like to skip this section or skip directly to the jobs that you are interested in, please take a look in the description of the video for timestamps. There are 5 main categories of jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. There are tanks, healers, melee DPS, caster DPS, and physical ranged DPS. Tanks are responsible for holding the attention of enemies to allow the other members of your party to perform their jobs properly and safely, and they are adequately equipped with innate traits and defensive abilities to help them withstand all of that damage. Tanks are often responsible for setting the pace of dungeons as well, as most random mage groups will defer to their tanks to decide how many enemies to pull at once. As a tank, you'll find that you'll often be in high demand, as many parties will be in search of a tank to fill out their party, and you'll usually have extremely short if not instant queue times and most content in the duty finder. Healers are responsible for maintaining the health and well-being of the party. The healer role requires players to be far more flexible and perceptive in how you approach your role's responsibilities. The best healers will look for as many opportunities as possible to take proactive measures to deal with incoming damage to the party, but must also be quick to react to any damage that is unexpected. Healers can often find themselves under a lot of burden as new strategies present themselves that can allow for faster or simpler kills by exposing more party members to more damage. It is my opinion that the healer role is the most difficult to play, and sometimes a good healer may be the only thing between a close clear or a complete party wipe. Melee DPS are required to be within close proximity to their enemies in order to deal the majority of their damage. They will also need to mind positional requirements, as some of their skills or abilities may need to be performed from the rear or the flank specifically in order to deal its maximum damage and effect. As you can expect, the biggest challenge melee DPS can face is anything that can put them out of range of the enemy, whether that be mechanics that knock back, or perhaps enemies that quickly dash around the arena. Caster DPS, as their name would suggest, have a strong emphasis on casting spells. The vast majority of spells can be casted from range, giving casters the advantage to be able to deal damage from afar. However, casting requires the player to remain still until their cast is finished, or risk interrupting their cast and forcing them to begin casting that spell again. And finally, physical range DPS have the distinct advantage of being able to strike their enemies from range while also being capable of moving. This mobility gives these jobs a strong preference for handling mechanics that may require high amounts of movement or maintaining a distance away from the enemy. This flexibility granted to these jobs comes at a price, as they are not nearly as capable of reaching the same heights of personal DPS as melee or casters. However, those who are not well equipped for personal performance are instead armed with ways to increase their allies' damage, opting to increase the entire party's damage as a whole, instead of just their own personal output. Alright, with all that basic information out of the way, let's hop in and start talking about the different tanks that are available. The Paladin is a stalwart defender and the only job to wield both shields in their offhand alongside a weapon in their main hand. This in turn allows the Paladin to be the only tank capable of blocking damage, which serves as another form of damage mitigation. As a Paladin, you'll have access to an extremely straightforward rotation between 3 physical combos and a brief spellcasting phase. Your oath gauge, which is used purely for defensive purposes, will fill gradually, and you'll be able to spend 50 of your gauge to place either a short automatic blocking buff in the form of Sheltron, or instead cast a damage mitigation buff on another party member in the form of intervention. When it comes to Paladin's defense and utility, you'll find that Paladin is equipped with the strongest defensive cooldown in the game in the form of Hallowed Ground, leaving them invulnerable to most damage for a full 10 seconds, with no downsides other than it having the longest cooldown period of 7 minutes. However, the strength of this cooldown cannot be ignored, as it can allow for some massive soaking of damage, and in some cases allows you to trivialize some tricky mechanics in certain fights. Aside from that, Paladins can also use Clemency on other party members, which acts as a fairly potent healing spell. They have access to Passage of Arms, which allows them to channel a massive block, which also reduces damage for all other party members behind them, and they have access to a party-wide Shields of Sort with Divine Veil. The Paladin fills the role of defender quite well, and is an excellent entry into the tank role for those who are new to it. Raw strength and brute force paves the way for the warrior. As a warrior, you're cycled between two different combos, one which grants a damage buff while the other generates more of your beast gauge and also provides some self-healing. Your beast gauge can be expended in various ways, all of which are offensive, from single target to AoE attacks to some strong abilities or a gap closer. There are plenty to use your beast gauge on. Once every 90 seconds, you'll be able to unleash one of the most satisfying attack buffs in the game with Inner Release. This will allow you to access all of your weapon skills and abilities tied to your beast gauge for free and will ensure that each attack is a guaranteed direct crit for 10 seconds. On the defensive, you'll have access to Home Gang, which will prevent most attacks from lowering your HP below 1. While not as strong as Paladin's Hollowed Ground, it can be used far more often due to its much shorter cooldown of 4 minutes, and can be a serviceable choice in many situations. Every 25 seconds, warriors will have the choice between using Raw Intuition, a short-term defensive buff, or instead they can cast Nascent Flash on a party member, granting them some extra defense and allowing the warrior to generate HP for both themselves and the target of Nascent Flash with their attacks for a short duration. Equilibrium is a sizable self-heal once every minute, and Shake It Off is a decent party-wide shield. The warrior is able to fulfill some DPS-esque fantasies while also possessing an excellent damage reduction and healing toolkit. A master of the dark arts, the Dark Knight wields both blade and magic in battle for both offense and defense. The Edge of Shadow and the Flood of Shadow are powerful single target and AoE damaging abilities that will use 3000 MP with each use. Using either ability will grant the passive 10% attack boost of Dark Side for 30 seconds, and its duration will increase 30 seconds with each use to a maximum of 60 seconds. However, there is a way for MP to be used more defensively with the Blackest Night. This will place a massive barrier on the Dark Knight or any party member of their choice that will total 25% of the target's maximum HP, and upon the shield being broken, will grant the Dark Knight with a free use of Edge or Flood, encouraging properly timed uses of the Blackest Night as to not lose out on the damaging potential of the Dark Knight's MP. One other resource the Dark Knight can pull from is their Blood Gauge. You'll have access to only one single target and one AoE combo as a Dark Knight, however the use of either will generate both MP and some of your Blood Gauge. Your Blood Gauge can be expended on some powerful abilities such as Blood Spiller, Quietus, and Living Shadow. You'll also be given access to Delirium as well, which will permit the use of Blood Spiller and Quietus without expending your Blood Gauge and granting some extra MP restoration. Dark Knights strive to counter magic damage, with Dark Mind being a fantastic personal cooldown and Dark Missionary a party-wide option. We've already discussed how amazing the Blackest Night is, but how fares Dark Knight's strongest cooldown, Living Dead? Upon its use, should the Dark Knight lose all of their HP, they will instead be given a Walking Dead status that will allow them to survive most damage for 10 seconds, however they will die if the status is not removed by the time it ends. The removal of Walking Dead requires the cumulative healing of your maximum HP. Whilst still an effective and strong defensive tool, it is one that requires considerable effort and resources from your healers, and will require a bit more coordination among your party. Overall, the Dark Knight offers a playstyle that is more focused around resource management, and brings with it some defensive capabilities that vary in quality depending on the situation. And finally, for the tanks, one of the newest job addition in Shadowbringers, the Gunbreaker opts to bring both a blade and a gun to the battlefield. Despite wielding a gun of sorts, the Gunbreaker is still primarily a melee job, and ranged combat is extremely limited as it is for the other tanks. You'll be able to generate cartridges by using your single target and AoE combos, or instead with the ability Bloodfest when it is available. Your powder gauge will keep track of your current cartridges, which can be expended to access Gnashing Fang, which will open up a much more powerful single target combo, as well as a powerful set of accompanying abilities. Gnashing Fang can only be used once every 30 seconds however, and your cartridges can instead be used on Burst Strike or Faded Circle in the meantime. As for the defensive capabilities, Camouflage will increase the Gunbreaker's parry rate by 50% while still providing a flat reduction of 10% damage taken, allowing this to excel in situations when being attacked by multiple enemies. Aurora allows the casting of a regen heal to any party member or the Gunbreaker themselves, and Heart of Light will reduce the magic damage taken by the entire party. Heart of Stone can be used to reduce damage taken by 15% for 7 seconds and can be casted on the Gunbreaker or any party member of choice. And finally, the Gunbreaker's strongest ability is Superbolide, immediately reducing the Gunbreaker's HP to 1, but making them invulnerable to most damage for 8 seconds. A shorter duration than Paladin's Hallowed Ground, with the added drawback of reducing the Gunbreaker's HP, but a given distinct advantage of having a slightly shorter cooldown of only 6 minutes. Overall, the Gunbreaker manages to bring a fresh style to the tanking roster that seems to fit in between the protection of the Paladin with the aggressive ferocity of the warrior. With all the tanks out of the way, we can now move on to the healers. The White Mage. Arguably the job that I have the most time and experience with, the White Mage is a healer through and through. The White Mage's greatest strength is their ability to output potent heals to fill HP bars. They possess a wide variety of spells and tools that allow them to assign the proper spell or ability to fit the situation, and oftentimes as a White Mage you'll be given choices on whether to use the spell or ability that favors either speed or efficiency while healing. White Mage's healing gauge manages to add even more healing to the healing juggernaut. Every 30 seconds while in battle, the White Mage will be granted a lily in their gauge. Lilies can either be used on a single target or AoE heal that will have no cast time or MP cost. You can have up to 3 lilies stored at any time, and using 3 lilies will grant a blood lily to be used on a powerful damaging spell with AoE capabilities. A major strength of the White Mage is their ability to restore and conserve their MP. Many of their most powerful spells have hefty MP costs, but the White Mage is well prepared with tools such as Thin Air to completely negate MP cost of spells for a short period, as well as a size to grant them 5% of their MP back with every use. White Mages also possess a surprisingly decent DPS potential, with their AoE damage in particular able to keep up with even some of the damage dealer jobs if the need for their healing spells is not a pressing concern. Where the White Mage falls short of the other 2 healers, however, is in damage mitigation and a noticeable lack of party utility. In terms of damage mitigation, White Mages are equipped with Divine Benison, a decent sized shield on a fairly short cooldown. Their Shadowbringers capstone ability, Temperance, also grants them an aura which reduces the damage taken of the party members around them by 10%. However, this is the extent of their damage mitigation abilities, and their amazing healing toolkit is better supplemented by having one of the other 2 healers present to make up for this shortcoming. Still, the White Mage is the most straightforward healer, and is definitely the recommended entry point for anyone looking to pick up the healer role for the first time. The Scholar is a healer that is accompanied by their pet Faerie. The Scholar is equipped with the most basic of healing spells and instead mostly relies on powerful abilities to heal and shield their allies. To access their abilities, Scholars will need to rely on the power of Aetherflow, which can be used every minute to restore some of their MP but also grant them 3 Aetherflow stacks to be expended in a vast multitude of ways, ranging from powerful single target or AoE heals to damage mitigation to even a small damaging ability. Proper use of your Aetherflow stacks to channel your abilities and the proper use of your Faerie is key to supplementing your small library of spells. Still, you do have some spells and they are quite powerful. Most notably is Adloquium. A beautiful mix of both healing and shielding, Adloquium is able to provide a respectable heal and shield with potential for an additional stacking second shield if this spell should crit. The other pillar of Scholar's healing is, of course, their Faerie companion. On their own, Fairies will maintain a closeness to the Scholar unless positioned specifically. They will do nothing but a small healing spell until ordered by the Scholar to execute one of their various abilities. One of the strongest abilities the Faerie has access to relies on the Faerie's Faerie gauge, which increases with uses of Aetherflow abilities. When possessing some Faerie gauge, the Scholar's Faerie can be ordered to execute Fey Union, allowing a potent regen to be casted on a party member of choice with each taken regen using a portion of the gauge. The Scholar is also capable of summoning Seraph for a brief period every couple of minutes. Seraph is a slightly stronger Faerie, using more potent heals that also adds shielding that can be stacked with some of Scholar's own shield spells. However, the Faerie being as integral as it is to accessing some of the Scholar's abilities may also be a bit frustrating to some players. You'll have most of the control over your Faerie as a Scholar, but the abilities that you must command your Faerie to do are just that, commands. And as such, you may find yourself in situations where your Faerie could be delayed in using an ability that you wanted them to use. Because of this, I'd say that the use of your Faerie's abilities does require a bit of forward thinking and perception, and using them reactively can be a bit more tricky. Switching focus back to the Scholars themselves, they are also equipped with Chain Stratagem to help bolster the party's potential DPS, and their own DPS capabilities are respectable enough. Overall, I'd say the Scholar is a much more busy healer than the White Mage. They have many more resources to manage, but are equipped with many powerful abilities to incentivize mastering the job. And the third and final healer is the Astrologian. The Astrologian is a bit unique as it has access to two different stances which allow either regen effects or shields to be added to a few key spells and abilities. These stances can only be switched outside of combat, but still this flexibility allows Astrologians to excel and pair with either of the two other healers quite well, and even with another Astrologian to some extent. And where I'd say White Mage excels in spell diversity, whereas Scholar is more ability focused, I think Astrologian manages to strike a fine balance in between, possessing more than a handful of potent spells and abilities, regardless of their stance choice. They are equipped with a basic spell toolkit that mirrors the basic spells you'd find on White Mage, and their aspect of benefit can be altered to mimic either White Mage's regen or Scholar's ad loquium, while aspect of Helios can mimic either Medica 2 or Succor. Not to mention that Astrologian has quite the ability lineup as well, with extremely potent heals, shields, and abilities that allow them to heal two targets at once with one spell, and a massive healing buff that also grants them the effects of both of their stances for a short time. The Astrologian's healing and defensive toolkit is extremely flexible and it doesn't trade any power for that flexibility either. However, you won't just be healing as an Astrologian. You'll also be able to bolster the DPS of your party with your divining deck. You will have 6 cards of which you'll be able to periodically draw. There are 2 sets of cards in your deck, with one set favoring melee damage and the other ranged damage. Each card in each set will also have 1 of 3 different seals for you to collect in your Arcana gauge, which they are used in combat. Once you've gathered 3 seals in your gauge, you'll be able to access Divination, which will increase the entire party's damage based on how many different seals you had in your gauge at the time. The amount of extra damage the Astrologian's cards can grant the party cannot be understated, and it is a core feature that separates the Astrologian from the other 2 healers. However, it is for this reason that some players may avoid Astrologian, as they may find their cards too distracting or perhaps do not like the random element of the job's nature. Alright, we've wrapped up both the tanks and the healers, so now let's get into the damage dealers, and we're going to start off with the melee DPS, and specifically the Dragoon. The Dragoon wields a strong lance and a pair of springy legs that are ideal for dragon slaying. The Dragoon possesses many satisfying abilities and long melee combo change, and is a great entry point into the melee DPS role, or just the DPS role in general. As a Lancer, you'll gradually learn things in a very intuitive manner, and by the time you can unlock Dragoon at level 30, you'll have a steady foundation of abilities and combos that will continue to build until you'll be fully equipped with all kinds of spectacular jumps and flourishing 5-part combos. As a fully equipped Dragoon, you'll have 2 main combos, one which grants a buff to your attack power while applying a potent damage over time effect to the enemy, and another that focuses solely on straight damage. As mentioned before, your combos will chain up to 5 weapon skills, however your positional requirements as a Dragoon will only be limited to the last 2 skills in your combos. Aside from your combos, you'll also want to be maintaining your Blood of the Dragon buff, which while active will increase the potency of your jump abilities. Maintaining Blood of the Dragon is actually fairly easy, as its duration will increase upon successful executions of your normal combos. The other resource you'll be gathering is known as your Dragon Gaze. Upon using Jump or High Jump, you'll unlock the ability to use Mirage Dive, and upon using Mirage Dive, you'll be given a point of Dragon Gaze. Once you've obtained 2 Dragon Gaze points, the next use of your Gerskogel ability will temporarily convert your Blood of the Dragon buff to the Life of the Dragon buff, which will allow you to use the Nastron and Star Diver abilities. It all culminates in a cycle of alternating your 2 combo chains, while mindfully using your abilities as they come off cooldown to eventually unlock the window to use even more powerful abilities. And the Dragoon isn't wanting in ways to support their allies either. They come equipped with Battle Litany, which will increase the critical hit rate of the entire party, as well as Dragon Sight, which allows the Dragoon to designate a party member to form a temporary bond that will strengthen that party member's attacks, so long as they remain in close proximity to the Dragoon, while also granting the Dragoon themselves an attack boost. Overall, the Dragoon is an intuitive and straightforward melee DPS, and one that I'd highly recommend to those starting off the game for the first time, or for those who are looking to dive into the melee DPS role. The Monk is a fairly unique job that boasts a high attack speed and is heavily dependent on proper positioning to maximize their damage. the monk forgoes the application of traditional combos in favor of cycling through different forms. The three forms are Oppo Oppo, Raptor, and Corel. When not currently in any form, you'll be able to perform weapon skills that require the Oppo Oppo form, which will cycle you into Raptor form. A Raptor skill will cycle you into Corel form, and a Corel skill will loop you back into Oppo Oppo form, and so on and so forth. Each form has 3 different kind of weapon skills: a skill that grants some sort of buff or applies a damage over time effect, a skill that simply deals more damage that can be used if the aforementioned buffs and dots do not need to be refreshed, and a skill that deals AoE damage. Upon successful uses of Corel form skills, you'll also be granted a stack of Grease Lightning. Each stack of Grease Lightning will grant you a bonus to your attack speed and damage, and you can reach a maximum of 3 Grease Lightning stacks by default, but can further increase your stack limit to 4 under the stance of Fists of Wind. As mentioned before, the monk demands proper positioning, as just about every single one of their weapon skills has a rear or flank positional requirement that will increase that skill's effectiveness. Pair this with the attack speed boost from your Grease Lightning stacks, and you'll find that you'll constantly be on your toes as a monk, switching back and forth from flank to rear, while also being aware of the several different buffs and dots that need to be maintained. Aside from all of that, there's one other resource that you'll need to be aware of as a monk, and that is your chakra gauge. Upon having one of your weapon skills crit, you'll be given a chance to gain a stack of chakra. Once you've accumulated 5 stacks of chakra, they can be expended on a powerful single target or AoE ability. Chakra stacks can also be built up with the meditation skill, which will deal no damage but grant 1 stack while in combat and a full stack outside of combat, or with the use of Brotherhood, which will grant the entire party a buff that increases the damage dealt by their physical attacks, and gives everyone a 30% chance to grant the monk a stack of chakra upon using any weapon skill. And a final notable utility the monk brings to the party is Mantra, which will grant a buff to the entire party that increases the effectiveness of incoming healing actions, one of the few abilities that increase the effectiveness of healing abilities as well as spells. Overall, the monk has the highest attack speed potential in the game and provides a high-paced action with a heavy emphasis on positional requirements and buff management, but rewards diligent players with some very high DPS potential. The ninja is a master of ninjutsu, and it is easily their most definable trait among the other DPS jobs. While being granted 3 different mudra, executing specific sequences of mudra will grant a different ninjutsu ability. However, failing to perform a proper sequence of mudra will punish you with the rapid medium, displaying your failure to your perceptive peers and also denying you the use of an actual ninjutsu use. The ninjutsu you can perform are quite powerful and numerous, too numerous for me to bother explaining each one. However, I will say it will take quite a bit of learning on your part to commit to mind what each sequence of mudra will result in, and if that sounds like something that you might find frustrating, it may be recommended that you avoid playing ninja. As aforementioned, improper sequences of mudra are not forgiving, and some people may not want to deal with that pressure, so be warned. Among your more powerful ninjutsu is Huton, an attack speed buff that is initiated by a ninjutsu action, but it is a buff that can and should be maintained with a weapon skill combo when it is necessary. Otherwise, you'll have a normal combo that strictly focuses on dealing more damage. With each successful weapon skill, you'll also be given some amount of Ninki that can be seen accumulating in your Ninki gauge. As you can probably expect by now, you'll be able to expend Ninki on some powerful abilities. However, the real showstopper of the ninja is, of course, Trick Attack. Executable every minute while also executing the Suton ninjutsu beforehand, this ability will apply a debuff to the enemy which will increase the damage they take for 15 seconds, effectively increasing the damage of every attacking player. This one ability makes the ninja a very sought after job for many parties. The ninja fulfills a very specific fantasy that many players may be seeking, and while the mudra and ninjutsu system may be frustrating and unforgiving at times, it is also very fun and satisfying mechanic to play with once you've learned all of the mudra combinations necessary. The samurai is a quaint warrior capable of dealing massive damage. As a samurai, you'll be able to build sen in your sen gauge, which can be expended on extremely potent Iajutsu skills. These skills require a short cast time before they are executed, restricting your movement momentarily but with the payoff of sizable damage. You'll be equipped with 3 different combos as a samurai, with each granting a different sen upon their proper execution. Your Gekko combo will grant an attack power buff, and your Kasho combo will grant an attack speed buff, while the Yukikaze combo provides no notable buffs in favor of only being 2 weapon skills long. The amount of different sand in your gauge will determine which Iaijutsu skill you perform, and you'll want to keep this in mind as you work to maintain your Higenbana effect on the enemy while setting up Midari Setsugeka uses in the meantime. Aside from maintaining your buffs and sen usage, you'll also be given a Kenki gauge. Kenki will accumulate upon using weapon skills, or granted when using the Ikishoten ability. Kenki can be expended on various powerful abilities, but also very importantly on Kaiten, which will increase the damage dealt by your next weapon skill, and is something that should be accounted for and prepped before every use of an Iaijutsu skill. Upon executing an Iaijutsu skill, you'll also be granted a stack of meditation, not to be confused with Monk's meditate and chakra stacks. Upon reaching 3 stacks of meditation, you'll be allowed to use your Shoha ability for additional damage. You'll also have access to the meditation ability, which will force you to stand idle and channel, which will grant you meditation as stacks and Kenki periodically. Samurai's sizable buffs and attack potencies position it as one of the highest performing DPS jobs. However, the Samurai offers no unique utilities to aid their party. Similarly to the ninja, the Samurai fulfills a particular Far Eastern fantasy, and it is personally my melee DPS of choice. However, I can see how the need to channel your Iaijutsu skills may impact the combat flow for certain players. Fans of the Final Fantasy series will need no introduction to the Black Mage. Its role in Final Fantasy XIV is a simple one. It is a traditional caster capable of high amounts of potent spells when allowed to channel their numerous casts. One of the greatest strengths of the Black Mage is their relatively simple rotation. As a Black Mage, you'll be afforded 2 stances that you'll constantly be switching between. Your stance is decided by which element you currently have stacks for, and accumulating the maximum amount of stacks will increase the effectiveness of the spells for that element. In Astral Fire, you'll have access to your most powerful and devastating spells. However, your MP cost will be increased and your MP regen will cease. Once your MP has been depleted, you'll need to switch to your Umbral Ice stances, which will drastically increase your MP regen and will allow you to build up Umbral Hearts, which will decrease the MP cost of your next fire spells. You'll be looking to maximize your time and cast in Astral Fire, while staying in Umbral Ice just long enough to regain your MP and build up your Umbral Heart stacks again. A quick read of all of your spells should create a fairly intuitive rotation, and you may be surprised how simple and repetitive your rotation actually is, as it involves squeezing as many fire forecasts into your Astral Fire phases as possible. The simple nature of your rotation is made up for in the pure spectacle of the massive explosions you'll be able to produce. And so, the difficult nature of Black Mage comes not from the complexity of your rotation, but instead from finding the opportunities to stand still and actually perform it. The Black Mage's greatest weakness is being forced to move and interrupt their casts. In order to minimize movement, you'll have to learn the best places to stand and root yourself on a fight-by-fight basis, and make strategic uses of your spells and abilities that allow you to cast instantly and while moving. The Black Mage, similarly to the Samurai, possesses no unique ability to aid the party, and instead provides a selfishly high amount of damage potential. The emphasis on player positioning and minimized movement can present a difficult challenge to some players, and yet it perseveres as a popular choice among the community. The Summoner. Explaining the Summoner is somewhat difficult because out of all of the jobs, I personally consider the Summoner to be the most difficult to learn, and a lot of the things you'll want to do to maximize your potential performance with the job won't be immediately clear. As such, I'll be generalizing a lot more than usual with this job, and I highly recommend looking up a proper guide to the Summoner if it interests you. You'll be able to command several general pets, and with one specializing in single target damage, another in AoE damage, and another that you'll never use. Commanding your pets is fairly streamlined, with you able to tell them to execute 2 different skills with Eki Assault 1 and 2, and only being able to use Enkindle to see their ultimate skill once every 2 minutes. The Summoner's rotation consists of a fairly long cycle, but your biggest windows for damage revolve around the summoning of your Demi Bahamut and Demi Phoenix, and prepping yourself to get the most out of each summoning, such as saving as many instant cast spells as possible for Demi Bahamut, and ensuring you won't need to recast your damage over time effects during the summoning. Most of what you'll be doing outside of these 2 summonings will be maintaining your Aether Flow and further rune stacks properly. As a summoner, you'll have 2 potent damage over time effects that you'll want to make sure you maintain. Other than that, you'll have your Aether Flow stacks, which you can obtain every 30 seconds with the use of Energy Drain. These can be used on either a powerful ability that requires both of your dots to be applied to deal maximal damage, or on a generic AoE ability. And besides that, you will have a Simber Filler spell in Ruin 3. Ruin 2 is an instant cast spell that deals less damage than Ruin 3, but can upgrade it to be Ruin 4 by obtaining further rune stacks by having your Eggy Assault attacks land. Since both of your Eggy Assaults and Ruin 4 are instant cast, you'll be wanting to use these opportunities to use your abilities without clipping into your next spell casts. Dreadworm Trance is something you'll be able to execute once every 55 seconds and is a prerequisite to summoning your Demi Bahamut. The use of Trance will allow you to cast your spells instantly and gives you access to the powerful Deathflare ability, which also ends the trance. As you can imagine from all of the instant casting available to you, Summoner is far more flexible with their mobility than Black Mage. It also has access to Resurrection, making it one of the 2 non-healer jobs capable of reviving downed party members. However, the Summoner is by far the most complicated and intricate job in the game. I mentioned it before, but a lot of what you should do as a Summoner is not something that most players would be able to learn by just looking over the descriptions of their spells and abilities. And if you do have an interest in playing Summoner, I highly recommend you look up a guide by real experts. My personal recommendation would be the guide written on the Auk Morning site, which I will leave a link to in the description of the video. Another fan favorite, the Red Mage is an extremely versatile job that is capable of harnessing both white and black magic and brings plenty of valuable utility to the party. The Red Mage's defining trait is their ability to dual cast. Upon successfully casting any spell, they'll be given a short time to instantly cast another follow-up spell. The Red Mage's library of spells are filled with both short and lengthy cast times, and you'll be able to manipulate the ability to dual cast to use your shorter casting spells to set up the opportunities to negate the longer cast times of your more potent spells. As mentioned before, the Red Mage harnesses both white and black magic, and it falls upon you to balance out the uses of your spells to ensure that the use of one type of magic never greatly succeeds the other. Once you've filled your balance gauge with enough black and white magic, you'll be able to engage enemies up close with a swift melee combo which can later be finished with potent spell flourishes. Your ability to dual cast allows the Red Mage a fair bit of mobility, giving it a quite distinct advantage over the other 2 casters. And while its potential DPS may not reach the same heights as the Black Mage or Summoner, it does bring its fair share of utilities. Embolden is Red Mage's party-wide buff that gives the Red Mage a diminishing magic buff and everyone else a physical attack buff. Red Mages also come equipped with Verraise, making it the second non-healer job capable of reviving downed party members. It also has access to Cure, which, while still no match for actual healer spells, is strong enough to handle a decent amount of damage in place of an absent healer, and it also makes Red Mage extremely capable in a lot of solo content. The Red Mage is an extremely versatile job, and in my opinion is one of the easier jobs to pick up and learn quickly. A lot of the job's mechanics are very simple and intuitive, and its ability to open up plenty of opportunities for movement and the fact that they bring heals and raises can really put a lot of ease on some beginner players' minds. Were not for the fact that you'd first have to level to at least level 50 on a different job to even unlock Red Mage, I'd say this would be my recommended entry point into the caster DPS role. And we're moving into the final DPS category, and that is the physical ranged DPS. The Bard brings both deadly arrows upon their foes and inspiring songs for their allies. The Bard is capable of playing 3 main songs, with each song offering the Bard a distinct buff or mechanic for its duration, while the rest of their allies are provided with a small attack buff. None of these songs are long enough to be played forever, however, and you'll be charged with cycling between them as the fight progresses. Your main rotation for dealing damage falls more into a priority system. Whilst you ensure to cycle your songs properly, you'll still be able to use your bow to deal some respectable damage to your foes. The Bard comes equipped with 2 extremely potent damage over time abilities that are integral to accessing the benefits of the songs you'll play, and the application and upkeep of both is your highest priority. As for the skills you'll be using once you've applied your poisons, you'll come equipped with Burst Shot, which you'll be able to use when you have nothing else more powerful to attack with. Incidentally, Burst Shot has a chance to proc the ability to use the much more powerful Refulgent Arrow skill, which would then take priority whenever it is available for use. The Bard's song gauge will keep track of which song you are currently playing, and depending on the song, you'll receive a different mechanic to interact with. While playing Maunder's Minuet, you'll be given the ability to accumulate repertoire stacks, which can then be expended on the Pitch Perfect ability. With Mage's Ballad, each repertoire trigger will instead instantly reset the cooldown of your Bloodletter and Rain of Death abilities, and with Omri's Paean, each repertoire stack will grant you a stacking attack speed buff to a maximum of 4 stacks. Upon reaching level 80, you'll also unlock the Soul Gauge, and regardless of which song is being played, each repertoire stack will grant 5 points in your Soul Gauge, which can be expended to use the powerful Apex Arrow skill. Besides the constant part-wide buffs that the bard will provide while playing their songs, they are equipped with more useful abilities still. Warden's Pain can instantly remove a detrimental effect from a party member, or instead apply a short buff that will automatically negate the next detrimental effect they receive. And Nature's Mend will apply a buff to a party member that'll increase the effectiveness of healing spells and abilities they receive. A greatly undervalued and underutilized ability that is an amazing boon for your healers. Bards are also equipped with Troubadour, which will reduce the damage taken by the entire party. However, do note that the other physical range DPS are equipped with an identical ability that is tailored thematically to their jobs that cannot be stacked together. And of course, we cannot forget, one of the biggest advantages afforded to the physical range DPS role is the ability to perform most of their damage from range and with complete freedom of mobility. Overall, the Bard is a fantastic job equipped with many powerful abilities to aid the party as a whole. Seeing as Archer is the only ranged physical DPS class available to choose when creating a new character, I'd highly recommend Bard as an entry point for those looking to get into the role for the first time. The Machinist breaks many conventions in Ishgard, choosing to wield a firearm in battle and coming equipped with all manner of strange technology to aid the Dragoons in the Dragonsong War. Similar to the Bard, the Machinist is also gifted with the ability to perform most of their damage while also moving and from range. The Machinist comes equipped with some very powerful weapon skills in the form of Drill and Air Anchor, but also a familiar 3-part combo to use with a lower priority. As a Machinist, you'll be generating 2 different resources. The first is Heat. You'll gain 5 heat when using your basic single target combo or your AoE damage skill. You can expend 50 heat to activate Hypercharge, which will grant access to 2 weapon skills that are unusable normally. Heat Blast is a weapon skill with a short recast time, and it will also reduce the cooldowns of both Gauss Round and Ricochet, allowing you to quickly pelt the enemy with quick weapon skills and an ability in between each. Auto Crossbow is an alternative AoE option, however it lacks the benefit of also reducing the cooldowns of your abilities. The other resource you'll accumulate is your Battery Gauge. Upon a successful combo, you'll gain 10 battery when using Heated Clean Shot, and you'll also receive 20 battery when using Air Anchor. Your Battery Gauge has a singular purpose, and that is to use its power to summon the Automaton Queen. The Automaton Queen will last longer proportional to the amount of battery used to summon her, and will help deal damage for her duration. Wildfire is another iconic part of the Machinist. A bit unconventional, it can be attached to an enemy, and for its duration, it will deal damage in proportion to the amount of weapon skills dealt to the enemy before it expires, at which point all of the damage will be calculated and promptly explode in a large satisfying number. Beyond that, Machinist is equipped with Tactician, reducing the damage taken by the party that will not stack with similar abilities on other physical range DPS. However, beyond the role action abilities that are unique to ranged physical DPS, Machinist does not really offer any other benefits to the party. In exchange, Machinist is capable of dealing higher amounts of damage than either Bard or Dancer, and with the benefit of having very little to hinder their damage uptime, they can often stand among even the stronger melee and caster DPS jobs and damage dealt. The Machinist is a fairly straightforward job. It deals damage well, it does it while moving, and it does it with a certain charm and style. Prior to Shadowbringers, the job performed very differently, and while some may still prefer the meticulous nature of its past iterations, its new rework for Shadowbringers have won over many players, and I'd highly recommend giving it a try. At long last, the Dancer has made its way to Final Fantasy XIV, the job I've been anticipating for many years. Equipped with dual chakrams to strike their foes from afar, Dancers are capable of attacking with fancy flourishes, as well as inspiriting their party with powerful dances capable of increasing damage dealt. As the name would imply, the most powerful and unique tools Dancers can bring to the party are their dances. Dancers will be able to perform 2 different dances. Standard Step begins a 2-step dance, while Technical Step will begin a 4-step dance. Upon beginning a dance, a dancer's usual weapon skills will become unavailable to use until the dance is over, and instead they'll be replaced with 4 different dance steps. A random sequence of dance steps will then need to be performed before the dancer can execute the finish of the dance, which will deal massive AoE damage and apply a damage buff depending on how many steps of the dance were performed correctly. It sounds a bit more complicated than it actually is, and upon getting hands-on experience, you'll likely pick up how to dance very quickly. Standard Step can be executed every 30 seconds, and upon completing both steps of the dance successfully, Standard Finish will deal massive damage and grant a 60-second buff that will grant a 5% boost in damage dealt. Technical Step can be executed once every 2 minutes, and upon a successful 4-step dance, will grant the entire party a 5% damage dealt boost. Before a battle begins, a dancer would be asked to choose a partner for close position. This buff is permanent unless given to another partner of choice, and with it, the dancer would be able to share the benefits of Standard Finish with their partner, essentially granting their partner a permanent attack buff if dances are performed properly. Devilment, a fantastic buff granting both critical and direct hit rates, will be shared with the dancer's partner as well. Of course, all of these sizable buffs do come at a cost. A dancer's personal DPS capabilities are noticeably lower than other DPS jobs, and as such they'll be having to rely on their partner and party to perform well alongside them to bring out the most of what the dancer job is truly capable of. Every great dancer requires a great partner. The dancer's rotation is extremely simple, but some luck is required to access their stronger skills. They possess a 2-part combo for single target damage and another 2-part combo for AoE damage. However, each skill is capable of triggering the use of a stronger skill that will deal more damage and also has a chance to grant a 4-fold feather. 4 full feathers can be accumulated to a maximum of 4, and can be expanded to use Fan Dance 1 and 2. Upon using either Fan Dance, you'll have a chance to trigger the use of Fan Dance 3. While we're still on the topic of RNG and chance, one other resource the dancer can gather is Esprit. An Esprit buff is granted to yourself and your dance partner with the use of Standard Finish, and it is given to the entire party with the use of Technical Finish. Any weapon skill or spell used by anyone under the effect of Esprit will have a chance to grant the dancer Esprit in their gauge. 50 Esprit can then be used on the powerful Saber Dance weapon skill. Constantly dealing with the whims of RNG can be a bit frustrating when you're playing as a dancer, and so, once every minute you'll be able to force the activation of all of your RNG locked skills and abilities with Flourish. Because of how the dancer's AoE skills are dealt in a circle around them, dancers may find themselves needing to be in melee range more often than the other physical range DPS. This can limit their mobility a bit more, however, to make up for this hit to their mobility, they are also granted the incredibly useful and incredibly fun ability, an Avant. This will allow the dancer to quickly dash forward in the direction of their choice, and uses of this ability can stack up to 3 times. As suspected by now, dancers are armed with the Shield Samba, reducing the damage taken by the party. However, they also cannot have this stack with Tactician or Troubadour. They also have Curing Waltz, a small AoE heal that originates around the dancer and their partner, which can be stacked and effectively doubled if both are in close proximity to each other. However, the true strength of the dancer definitely comes from the benefits of Standard Finish and Technical Finish. The dancer may not be capable of dealing high damage on their own, but with the right partner, the dancer can bring a substantial boost in attack power to the party with their dances. And there we have it, that is all the jobs currently in Final Fantasy XIV. I hope this video proved useful to you and provided you with a quick peek at each of the jobs and their main mechanics and standout features. On screen now are some last minute broad recommendations if you're still having trouble deciding on a job to play. If you're interested in more Final Fantasy XIV content, be sure to check out other videos I've done. I've made some job guides in the past, and I constantly play and stream Final Fantasy XIV, which you can check out in the respective playlist, and I also play other games and stuff as well. So, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in another video. Sayonara, bye bye.